I do want to say something just before we get started. I want to say my favorite thing about this movie, the fact that the entire soundtrack is just two songs over and over again. It's my favorite thing.
Look, man, don't mess with perfection.
It's true. This is episode 5 of I Finally Saw, where today I finally saw Halloween. Well, hello to all you wonderful people out there. I'm joined today on this discussion about Halloween. For our audio-only listeners, Dayton has gone all out, shall we say. Dayton, you wanna try and
Dayton's the
explain to
only one
people?
with a budget.
He's the only one. Dayton, do you want to explain to people what's going on over here?
Um, it hurts. This thing's super tight on my head.
He's got the whole outfit for Mr. Michael Myers going on here, down to the mask, and I think he's starting to suffocate because.
For the audio listeners, he looks about as bad as he sounds.
Oh my goodness, he's free.
Wait, Michael Myers is kind of
You
cute.
can kind of get it. Yes. Also joining me today is a new face. We have with us. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Ronan. I have been on the back end of this show for a while and knowing about it, so it's awesome to finally be here and talking about Halloween.
Right. So I've asked you this question before, but I think this is the first time proper on the show that I've asked you this question. So just to kind of introduce yourself to the audience, I'd like to ask everybody the first time they're on, what is one movie right now that you feel like you can endlessly rewatch?
A movie right now that I could endlessly rewatch. I mean, it's probably going to have to be the movie I've seen the most, which is probably Akira, which is also my favorite movie. Something that you all poke fun at me for behind the scenes. But it's long, it's dense, it's got, some might say, a little too much story packed in, but every time I watch it, I find something new to get excited about. And I've seen it probably like upwards of 50 times.
Right. Well, let's go ahead and start shifting in towards the movies. Just to sort of introduce the movie a little bit, as always, here's a little snippet that I have stolen from Google because I am too lazy to write anything myself. On a cold Halloween night in 1963, 6-year-old Michael Myers brutally murdered his 17-year-old sister Judith and was sentenced away for 15 years. But on October 30th, 1978, while being transferred for a court date, a 21-year-old Michael Myers steals a car and escapes Smith's Grove, where he returns to his quiet hometown of Haddonfield, Illinois, and looks for his next victims.
Halloween. I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil.
So just sort of to kick off, I want to go around and ask everybody, how familiar were you with this movie prior to getting ready for this discussion? I'll start with Dayton. Dayton, how familiar were you?
I was pretty familiar with it. Like the first time I ever heard about Halloween was technically at this like store. They were doing like a Halloween trivia thing, and like the only thing my mom knew about she's seen Halloween, but she remembers that like the killer's name was Michael, and I was like, it's Michael, and I won like free shoes, I think. But the first time I really got into Halloween was like Dead by Daylight. I got into that game, and then I just see this guy there, and I didn't know that he was from a movie until I saw the DLC, and I'm like, oh, it's from the movie Halloween. I guess I'll watch it because I love this game.
Well, for the folks at home, do you mind introducing just briefly explaining what Dead by Daylight is?
Smash Brothers, but it's for horror. So it's just a bunch of one killer, 4 survivors, and a bunch of the killers are like from other stuff, like FNAF.
Thank you. That's very eloquent. He's pointing at his FNAF plushies. That's amazing. Ronan, what about you? How familiar are you with this movie?
So, prior to this recording, I had seen Halloween, I want to say around 2 or 3 times. When I first got into horror movies, it was with the Evil Dead movies, which are kind of the same time period as Halloween and sort of the early foundational horror stuff. I just kind of knew about Michael Myers just by pop culture meiosis or osmosis, I think. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. One of those. But it was one of those when after I had watched the Evil Dead movies and started to delve into horror, it was just kind of towards the top of the checklist on, the horror movies you have to watch. And obviously John Carpenter's name is pretty synonymous with those foundational horror movies. So, yeah, it's hard to point to like one moment, but I just kind of always knew about it and have now seen it a few times.
Yeah, I think, well, speaking for myself, I think I knew about it similarly, sort of in reputation, because it's just so synonymous and iconic. Just the mask and the jumpsuit and everything. But I think the actual movie itself, I don't know. Like, I remember it was sort of a talking point because there was like sort of that new trilogy of movies that came out pretty recently. And so it was sort of in the public consciousness again. But in terms of like specifics about it, I really didn't know much. So there was a lot of... I didn't necessarily know what to expect, per se, going into it. But yeah, this is sort of interesting because I think this is already the second movie we're talking about on this show. That was 1978. The first being Superman with Richard Donner. And this is interesting because I don't know, when I think this, I think is a very apt film for the time period that it came out in, because it I don't know, I look at this and I'm like, yes, this feels very much like something that is sort of the transition between what was kind of going on in the 70s and then sort of the precursor to a lot of especially American horror in the 1980s. This I mean, I don't know much about horror history, but there was a lot here that I almost kind of have to wonder. I'm like, this definitely feels like the foundation for a lot of franchise horror that would come in the States. Especially, I think to me, the obvious example is Friday the 13th.
Exploring uncharted territory.
Totally charted.
Just talk.
Sure. The only reason she babysits is to have
Halloween.
I guess let's just go ahead and start shifting into sort of overall thoughts about the movie. I think it was comedian Patton Oswalt had a whole stand-up bit about this movie and how sort of comparatively quaint it is in almost sort of a modern lens. And I could see that sort of being a turnoff for some people. We're in an age, I mean, even like a few years later when you start to get like Evil Dead 2, where you're almost sort of anticipating a level of kineticism with your horror. But this feels so much more methodical. And I think it's always born out of, like, you want the movie as a whole to feel appropriate for your monster. And I think this movie is very much in line with that. Like, Michael is sort of described as like having an inhuman amount of patience. And so I think it's appropriate then that this is a movie that very much at times, despite having a 90-minute runtime, at times it feels like it's really taking its time.
I think the movie has definitely earned its sort of cultural reputation, and I think you put it pretty well, where it's like the quiet sort of methodical tone over just the whole thing. And I think part of what I love about Halloween so much is at the time it was pretty groundbreaking in it being sort of set in a suburban landscape. a lot of the movie happens during the daytime, and the quote unquote monster is just a man. It's not a zombie, it's not the Wolfman, the Invisible Man, any of those like sort of higher than reality concepts. It is sort of, something that audiences weren't used to, and people like myself who grew up in a suburban environment, like how Haddonfield is portrayed, is very much like, oh, that, with suburban areas being so homogenous, it's like, oh, well, Haddonfield kind of looks like my town. That adds a level of fear to the whole thing. And I think you really can't, like, John Carpenter is just one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, living or dead, I think. And I think the work he does on Halloween is just incredibly solid in the way that all of his movies are.
Dayton, what are your sort of overall thoughts about this? I mean, you've invested in a cosplay, so...
I mean, I like the movie.
I would hope.
I like the movie. It's, a lot of it's just more, I've just loved the kind of, like, knowing about the making of this movie. That's usually what draws me most into it. Because there's a lot of moments where you're like, for me at least, I'm taken out because I'm like, I know this is a movie, but I'm like thinking about what they were doing to make that scene possible. But it's still a good story. It's not like I think the stalking is just, it's really good at building tension, I feel. And it's moments where it's quiet, but it doesn't feel boring. And also, I love that Michael is just sometimes behind in scenes, and there's a lot of times where it's that music cue of, but they will have but I think it's really cool whenever they don't play that and it's just he's there. That's the best moments of this movie.
Yeah, I think that's also very much, it's so of this era of sort of using a music cue instead of a like sound effect, which is sort of got really bad around like the late 2000s Insidious era of horror movies. But I think, yeah, Michael is excellently done with like the music cue, the scenes where like there is no music cue. And it's like it's the Pavlovian response of hearing that music and kind of immediately freezing up, like, oh, like where is he? And especially with like what I said earlier, where it's in the daylight a lot of times, like when Michael is just standing behind that hedge, it's like it makes it feel like there are no other people in the world other than Laurie, her friend, whose name I don't remember, and Michael. Like it's such an isolating thing for being in a wide open space.
And it's interesting when you watch a movie like this and you sort of start to look back on other movies you've seen and you sort of realize like, oh, that's where that came from. One of the things that really stood out to me was near the end, the amount of just wide open windows. And that creates this like psychological effect of like, is he there or is he that one? Which is of course further emphasized in the last few shots of the movie. But that really reminded me of sort of techniques later on employed in something like Longlegs, which like that's another movie where there's a lot of like wide angles with doorways and open windows that sort of lure you into the sense of just like, is something there? Because why is that open? And seeing that here, I thought was really apt. And yeah, I thought, of course, for me, the standout performance is, I believe it's Donald Pleasance as Dr. Loomis. There's just, he's, I think to me, an actor who really makes this movie, just because of how he's giving it his all. And I really appreciate that, because that's a character that I think can really sort of make or break a story like this. But you can see like the fact that he is so invested in it, and he's like has this weirdly sort of, I don't know, just like theatrical sense about him that like this is he almost feels like a sort of reappropriation of like the Monster Hunter or something, but taking that into this more sort of modern suburban context of just like he's just a doctor. He's also like, I don't know, what is it? There's the one moment that cracked me up where he just like scares the crap out of the bullies. He's just, what is his name? Richie?
Oh yeah.
He's like, Richie, get out of here.
Lonnie. Yeah.
Lonnie,
get out of here. Yeah.
That cracked me up.
I don't know if I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but one of my notes is Dr. Loomis is a madman who should not be a doctor, because as much of a great character as he is, wow, this guy is just ready to fly off the handle at any moment. And everything you said about him being an interesting character, his obsession with Michael is what makes him so. And where Michael is so methodical and silent, I think you need the polar opposite to kind of make the, for lack of a better word, like the feud between them to make it more interesting.
Well, he's almost like Doc Brown. Like, he's running around, and like he's like he the first time it's interesting because like I think he only actually sees Michael like once in the entire movie, and he just immediately starts blasting, no hesitation.
Yeah.
And I don't really understand his plan either. Like the sheriff is just like, well, I really think we should call the authorities. He's just like, no. If you do that, they'll be searching the front and back of every house up and down this neighborhood. And it's like, shouldn't we be doing that? I didn't really understand his plan.
The other thing that always just tickles me about this movie is in the beginning, after the scene in the rain where Dr. Loomis and the nurse are going to the hospital, and then Michael Grand Theft Autos their car to drive to Haddonfield. And then it's the next day when Dr. Loomis is talking to, I believe it's the head of the hospital.
Oh, yeah.
And he's talking about, like, I'm telling you, he's going back to Haddonfield. And the head of the hospital is just not really taking it. I don't think Dr. Loomis has any directive or orders or, like, stakes as to why he should go to Haddonfield. I'm pretty sure he just chooses to do that. This is a doctor gone rogue.
Oh yeah, he doesn't have like a warrant or anything.
Goes miles away. How did he even drive? It's like somebody gave him lessons.
I love that moment where he's just kind of like, someone around here must have given him lessons or anything. It's just like it's like somebody asked Carpenter, like, well, how does he know how to drive? And he's like, I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, that becomes in the Rob Zombie remake. That becomes a whole plot point of young Michael having a friendship with a janitor played by Danny Trejo, and there's like, I'm pretty sure there's a line about driving lessons.
Oh my goodness.
I hate that movie.
Rob Zombie remake? I haven't seen it.
Yes, I've seen it.
Well, you know, I think what this movie was really missing was just a crowd of people chanting "Evil Dies Tonight." I think that would have really made this movie.
Oh my god. The day I never hear those words again is the best day of my life, frankly.
Not soon enough.
The other main note that I had that I wanted to talk about just before we are too far gone, I wanted to talk about the opening to this movie because I think it just might be one of the best openings in all of film.
Right.
It was shot on a Steadicam, which was still very new technology, and was shot by Dean Cundy, who
legendary cinematographer.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Legendary cinematographer. I think he also invented the Steadicam, if I'm not mistaken. But he also did all of the Steadicam work on The Shining, which is like one of the other movies that is iconic for its Steadicam use. And I think the Steadicam, with this opening being a long POV, I think the Steadicam perfectly serves what we've talked about Michael's characterization of being slow and being methodical and smooth, in the sense that even as a child, going to do these going to kill his sister, he's very slow about it. He's very methodical about it. And the uncanny smoothness of the Steadicam really helps that, because no human hands move a camera that smooth. Like, that's the point of the Steadicam. And sometimes I think Steadicam is not the right choice, but in this case, it's a clear instance of the tool being used because of its enhancement to the overall storytelling. And I think as far as opening scenes go, I mean, a lot of the best ones I think are from horror movies. I put this one and Scream up there with some of the best just opens in film. And yeah, I wanted to touch on that because I think that opening scene is just so, like, it almost exists as a short film itself. It's so good.
I love the ending shot of the opening scene where the mask comes off and it's just young Michael standing there with a knife, and you just get like this crane shot, and everyone's just standing there in silence, and it's almost like a stage play or something where it's like in freeze, and everyone's just sort of standing there, and you hang in that moment. But yeah, well, that was really surprising. I remember it was really surprising to me when the credits started rolling, because I did not know Dean Cundey had shot this movie, but I realize now that he's something of a frequent collaborator, I suppose, for John Carpenter. But yeah, legendary cinematographer. I think he did the first Jurassic Park. He did the Back to the Future trilogy. I think he did Roger Rabbit. And, of course, most famously, Jack and Jill. And Camp Rock. So
see, here I was trying to get us to a serious point, and you went and Camp Rock in my face.
Ruined everything. But yeah, of course, also starring Jamie Lee Curtis, now Oscar Award winner, contentious Oscar Award winner.
I believe she was only like 19 or 20 doing this movie.
Yeah. I really love the scenes of just all the young girls just chatting about nonsense. My favorite one is when it's almost like they had to fill for time or something, or they just told her to improvise. I don't remember which one of her friends it is, but it's like Laurie is like staring at Michael off in the distance, and then in the background, one of her friends is just like, "I forgot my books, but who needs books? I don't need books. Books are stupid." And it's just this like, it's like they were like, whoa, we need to fill this dialogue. Say something. Keep talking about the books. Keep talking about the books. And it's just like all this stuff about like, well, books are dumb. I always forget my books. Who needs books? And it's just so rapid fire. It's like they desperately needed to fill for time. And maybe it was written that way, but I loved that moment.
The friends would just have the strangest lines. There was like one of them said like, I hate a guy who has a car and doesn't have a sense of humor. It's like, if he didn't have a car and he didn't have a sense of humor, would that be better?
It's all giving like sound check energy where it's like, oh, we're having an issue with the lav. Could you just talk for a little bit? And it's like, I always forget my books, but who needs books? I hate books. One of my favorite just on these dialogue scenes, what might be my favorite line delivery in the whole movie is when Laurie, Jamie Lee Curtis's character, is talking to her friend, and they're talking about guys, and she brings up Ben Tramer, and Laurie goes, "Ben Tramer." I don't know if this is getting too far out ahead, but we never see Ben Tramer in this movie. But in Halloween 2, which takes place directly after Halloween 1, Ben Tramer is a guy who is dressed as Michael Myers, like in the same costume that Michael wears, and gets hit by a cop car into, I believe, an ambulance and explodes.
He's a blonde Michael Myers.
What is that costume supposed to be? Like, I know.
Did Michael dye the hair, or did Ben Tramer go like, this isn't good enough, let's make it blonde?
What if Ben Tramer's mask just had like the top of the head cut out, and that's just what his hair looked like? Like it's like,
it looked
a visor. Ben Tramer might have dead hair.
Well, he was dead after the
And Laurie
ambulance
Strode, and Laurie
exploded.
Strode wants to run her fingers through that dead hair.
Wait, I'm confused. I thought Halloween 2 was the one about the evil television, pumpkin masks. Or am
No,
I
that's
thinking
Halloween 3, Season of the Witch.
Okay, and then which one's Halloween Water?
H2O, Halloween, there's a subtitle.
2000.
Or no, it's H2O Halloween,
Oh.
and then the next one was Halloween Resurrection.
Oh my goodness.
There was
Or-
a sequel where you know Tommy Doyle? Remember the little kid?
Oh, not Tommy Jarvis.
Yes, Tommy Doyle.
Paul
Yes.
Rudd plays him in like the last one of
Oh,
the
yeah.
first franchise
was-
version.
Yeah, that was Rudd's first movie where he was credited as Paul Stephen Rudd.
Oh, I don't like that. Yeah, I'm glad he got rid of that. Stephen Rudd.
And then, yeah,
I'm pretty sure in Halloween Kills, Tommy Doyle is played by the nerdy kid from Breakfast Club.
yes, Anthony Michael Hall,
Yeah.
aka Farmer Ted from 16 Candles as well. And he does not look like he used to, I'll say that. And actually, Paul Rudd would have been in Halloween Kills, but he was busy with the Ghostbusters movies.
Oh.
I don't think Paul could have saved that movie.
It's actually legitimately the only other Halloween movie I've seen other than this Rob Zombie and the first one.
Wow,
Halloween
that's
Kills?
cursed.
Yeah, I worked at the movie theater when Halloween Kills came out, so I was like,
Oh, that makes
you know,
sense.
I have free tickets. I'll go see it.
It's so again, I mean, it's so funny when you sort of go back to the start of this and it's just kind of like it's just sort of like so sort of quiet and intimate in a sort of way. I'm just like I don't know. I would be curious to see like if this movie would still sort of like freak out younger people. Because I don't know. I think I don't even know if it's just like a generational difference or what, but I feel like because the 80s were sort of that was sort of the really when like Stranger Danger was really starting to be that was like the era of like McGruff and like Where Are Your Kids, those sort of like PSAs, and so this is I guess sort of leading into that time period, and now it's so sort of like culturally ingrained. Almost, I don't know. I would be curious. I would be curious what younger folks think that don't sort of have the pre-established knowledge would think about something like this. Because it's very
They don't have the
quaint.
poppy playtime. They got that pop.
Yeah, what did Bendy and the Ink Machine fans think about Halloween?
Five Nights at Freddy's fans and one Halloween fan debate. Watch it now on youtube.com/Jubilee.
There's a weirdly prophetic thing in this movie. Of course, that one of the movies that they're watching on the TV that they particularly highlight is, of course, the original RKO version of The Thing, which, of course, Carpenter, I think just, was it like 4 or 6 years later, goes on to direct his remake of. So I thought that was really interesting. I'm like, I wonder if that was on his mind even all the way back then.
I don't know. I don't know that I ever even put those dots together.
There's a lot of just little shots in this movie that really sort of stick out to me as just, I think, really clever and simple but effective in terms of their ideas. And there's two that always stick out to me, and it's the one right before he kills the boyfriend, and the knife comes up, and they just have the light reflecting off of it that gives it almost this sort of like ghostly effect to it that makes it just feel it's almost sort of supernatural. And then the other one is just, of course, near the end of the movie when Laurie's sort of hiding, and it's just like he just like comes out of the darkness, and it's just like half of the mask is just illuminated in the void or something. I loved that shot when I saw it. I was like, it's so simple, but it's just like, yeah, and I think it's so apt then that he's credited, I believe, in this movie. It's just the shape, isn't he?
Because that was the nickname they were using in the script, and so that even still to the newer Halloween trilogy, they maintain or keep continuity with referring to him as the Shape in like the scripts and the credits and things like that. Like if you go on the cast for this movie, Nick Castle is credited as the Shape. And then like the young Michael is one actor, and then when he has his mask ripped off in this movie, that is a completely other actor. So like everything mask on was Nick Castle, and then for those moments where he was mask off at age 21 was a completely different actor.
One thing about Michael removing his mask, it's so crazy. It doesn't really remove his fear factor. It's like, I still think like of him as just like a unfeeling monster. Like, man, he's kind of like the embodiment of evil. And like whenever like Friday the 13th shows Jason's mask, they always have to make it. It's like whenever he removes the mask, it always has to be like really like gross, or it has to have like some like major deformity to it. But Michael is just a guy who just got stabbed like the eye, like has like a scar because he was stabbed in the eye.
Yeah, I think that kind of speaks to the overall like the thing that we've touched on just a little bit, and that like the movie overall, it feels like the underlying message is like man is capable of this, and like these things that we would credit to monsters and to like otherworldly beings in other movies is like he's just a man, and when the mask comes off, he is an overwhelmingly normal looking guy. Like he's just a pretty typical white guy, brown hair, whatever. And I think that sort of feeds the idea of like the movie being in suburbia, the movie happening during daylight. It is so like, it's so grounded in that way. And I think that just makes everything about it work that much better. And in later movies, they sort of delve into the like embodiment of evil thing to a degree that I'm not a huge fan of. But I think in this movie, in isolation, like before the weird like hospital cult of the constellations thing in the Paul Rudd movie. Yeah, man, I'm telling you. I think this movie in a vacuum works so well.
I thought the comparison you made to sort of earlier almost monster movies was really interesting, because oftentimes, to my understanding, horror before this was very sort of fantastical, and they sort of contrast that or highlight that in the movie itself, because like the horror movies that they're all watching are all these old sort of more so sort of sci-fi B movies. And in my understanding, like people sort of talk about the way that like horror is always sort of reflexive of what a lot of sort of the general anxieties are of the time. Like in the like 40s, you had a lot of things, to my knowledge, about like sort of foreign, like aliens. In 40s and 50s, you had like a lot of things about like aliens, because you had all this stuff about like foreign invaders, and all that, and sort of the war, but also like weird like creatures as a result of like atomic experiments or whatever, because atomic energy and the atomic bomb was like this sort of new sort of thing that we were still sort of grappling with. And then in the 80s, you have like a lot of slashers and stuff because of sort of like Stranger Danger. And then like, you know, recently I feel like we've seen a lot of, you know, particularly like body horror, and you know, think like The Substance obviously is like sort of a highlight about like bodily autonomy and self-confidence and all that, which is very much a big thing right now. And so, like, the early, like, Universal monster movies and sort of the horror movies that we sort of think of when we think about, like, 50s and 60s are always very sort of, like, it came from outer space and all that. And it's sort of, like, the idea was, like, we're bringing you something you wouldn't see anywhere else. And with some of the Universal monster movies or something like King Kong, there was sometimes, like, a sympathetic angle that was sort of played up with, like, Frankenstein, or like, yeah, like Beauty's What Killed the Beast with King Kong or something, where it's sort of like we're sort of having to grapple with the fact that like maybe our sort of immediate responses to it is what created this monster or whatever. And I think that's sort of the context that I think is now lost. I think, you know, coming up on 50 years since this movie has come out, where I don't think that this was an all too common premise and setting for a horror movie, which I think you Ronan sort of brought up. And now we're sort of like slashers are a genre of almost unto themselves, of just like person, like comes into place, and there's like, if you're talking about specifically like just slasher movies, there's an endless supply of them today, and all of them largely are taking place within contemporary locations. But this was sort of different. The monster was in a different location. It came from outer space, or there was always in my mind sort of like some sort of fantastical angle to it, and this was just like, it's a guy who is just devoid of sympathy. He doesn't understand it and is acting on instinct, but also like willfully. Like, this is just, he wants to do this. He wants to sort of inflict suffering. And I imagine that at the time that was probably sort of poignant and jarring for some people, where it's just kind of like, and yeah, I think now it's sort of been demystified in a sort of way because it's sort of proliferated. But I always want to try and look at like the time period of when this came out, because I imagine it very much heavily contrasted with a lot of to me, I imagine that this was something that was very much sort of going against the grain at the time, because like I said, I feel like most horror things up until this point, there was almost a sort of sci-fi angle to them, or they were so sort of beyond human that you couldn't really sort of sympathize with them or something, where you have like like the I forget what it was, but it's like the big, like, oh, what's that movie with the big spider or something, but they're watching it, I think, in like Lilo and Stitch or something, but it's just like, yeah, it's just like, it's a big spider, oh, it's just kind of like, there's no you just go to the drive-in and see that, and it's just like, well, that was pretty freaky.
I think one of the things that also kind of helps that feeling is how low budget this movie was, because the budget for this movie was $320,000,
Oh, wow.
which is like, obviously was more back in the day. I don't know exactly what it is, accounting for inflation.
I looked it up. It's about over $1 million.
Over $1 million. Okay, which is still like incredibly small. Like a low budget movie nowadays is like, I think Lee Winnell's Wolfman was like $8 million or something like that. I mean, $320,000, not a lot of money. Like Nick Castle as the Shape worked for $25 a day, and with that budget and the limitations therein and the setting, they're kind of left with no option other than this movie takes place in suburban America. We have to film in suburban America, because they filmed in Pasadena, I'm pretty sure, which like the Myers house still is like 20 minutes from where I live here in LA.
Wow.
And a lot of it is still very intact. Like the storefront used for the hardware store, I believe, is still intact. The Strode house, the Myers house, and the high school are all still here, because it was just real locations. And I think that just feeds the overarching idea that this movie is so grounded, is how many real locations, like just how real it all is. Because like you were saying at the top with the autumn leaves to make it look like fall time, like obviously nowadays that would either be like CG leaves falling in the background, or they would color grade it to tint the whole thing like orange. Like the just throwing leaves on everything, like that's a very tangible thing that I feel like is so perfectly in this era that I really, really enjoy.
I think but I don't know. Every time, like the beginning, whenever like Laurie's dad's telling her to drop the keys off the Myers place, the music was really overpowering that dialogue. I'm not sure if that was just the version I was watching, but I feel like the music a lot of the times, just for dialogue, was weirdly mixed.
Yeah.
I did.
I mean
there-
that I attribute a lot of weird sound mixing to this era. I can't say that I have noticed any of that. I will say on the subject of the music, done by John Carpenter himself, which I think is just super cool. And that in the newer trilogy of movies, he still stayed on to do the music, and I believe did it with his son on the newer movies. So I always just love it when a director is multifaceted like that, or like a Steven Soderbergh type who edits his own movies as well. And I think the Halloween theme itself is just like musically pretty perfect because it's a instantly iconic motif that you can repeat and kind of transcribe in different ways.
I'm pretty sure John Carpenter said like he like John Carpenter before this movie didn't really know much about music, and he was just like, I'll do it myself though.
Which is crazy because it's better than a lot of people who know about music.
Yeah. Well, it's hummable, and to me that is. I know some people that might seem like a very backhanded compliment, but I do mean it so sincerely because I listen to so much music nowadays, and I feel like a lot of horror movies sort of undervalue how important and worthwhile having genuine attempt at a memorable score can be, because it's all like book slams whenever something pops out at you now or something. And yeah, I mean, I there was a couple times that sort of chuckled because I think there's a couple of points in the movie, sort of in the second act, where it's just those two sort of songs. There's like the main theme, and then there's like this sort of descending piano thing, and it's just kind of like it'll be quiet for 2 minutes, and then it just smash cuts to him standing there, and they're just playing the song again, and so that made me chuckle a couple times. And then there was like the one time I think I accidentally burst out laughing in this movie is when he's standing by the laundry, because there's no like anticipation or any, like I'm so sort of used to like the whole oh well, something scary is about to happen, so we got to have like the strings building and we're plucking them, and it's like sounds like all these like creepy crawlies are climbing up the violin, and then it's just like, and then the sound ducks down and boom, he's standing there, and it was so like matter of fact. Where she's just like on the phone and it's just like, well, hold on a second, and he's just like standing there not moving, and it kind of made me chuckle. But it's also like, I think that was appropriate though for like what they're going for, if you do the whole, I think if you do have the soul, like the so vibrant invasive soundscape, I think it almost kind of is antithetical to the kind of monster that he is, like I said, like your movie, I think, needs to feel appropriate to your monster. Like Freddy is a dream creature, so those movies feel like nightmares, and there's all these weird camera angles and all that stuff, and Michael is a methodical shape that stalks his prey and doesn't emote, and so the camera, like you said, the camera is very steady, the soundscape is very minimal but effective and intentional, and there's a lot of sort of flat angles. I don't mean to... I actually haven't seen the kill count from this video, but I think just for my sake, just because I want to throw this out there, and I'm just curious, what is your guys' personal golden chainsaw in this movie?
Oh man, I mean, off the bat, I think I'm gonna... I can't remember the character's name, because when everybody just has like
I never
basic
remember.
white people names, they all kind of blend together. It's Laurie's friend who Michael kills and then sets up his sister's gravestone in the bed.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
I think just I mean, it's such a striking visual, and especially where like, the name that's getting thrown around by the characters in the movie is Myers. It's not necessarily Michael. Like Sam Loomis is talking about, oh, Michael, but like Laurie's dad is like, hey, it's the Myers house. Everyone is calling it the Myers house. And so the headstone saying Judith Myers, it like strikes that, but where the focus is normally on the Michael side of the Michael Myers equation, it kind of evokes a different reaction to me to see like, oh, right, like Myers is the family name. Like there were other Myerses, which is something like I personally always find funny is when a character's name is so like insular and they have a family, you forget that the family also has that name. Like the most poignant example I always think of is funny is the movie Donnie Darko. Like you kind of forget that that's his name and that he has a sister whose last name is also Darko, and like they call her Samantha Darko, and it's a little weird. So I think, yeah, I mean but then again, like there's the one where Michael just pins that guy to the wall, which is also just one of the most iconic visuals I think in horror, which they go back to replicate quite a bit.
That's my golden chainsaw. Yeah, that's my golden chainsaw. Just because I like to imagine Michael rigging that guy up in the ceiling so that he can fall dramatically. I just like to imagine that where he's just kind of because I'm like what is he doing up there? Realistically, it's not a nitpick at all. I love it, but I'm just like, what is he doing up there? I just like to imagine Michael. He learned all of these knots at some point or something. It's just kind of like, all right. This is going to be so funny.
Somebody must have given him lessons.
The Girl Scouts. They keep talking about the Girl Scouts.
The reason it's my golden chainsaw is because the head tilt Michael gives at the end. Because it really makes him more of an... It makes him more of just... Of like, really... He doesn't... Like some in the past, maybe the guy would like roar or something. But it's like...
Yeah. It's
really
so yeah. It just reinforces that he's just doing this because he's got some sort of sick fascination. And
it's like and it's great too because it puts the onus on the audience to have a reaction. It's like I this is related, I promise, but Bryan Cranston in an interview talked about Malcolm in the Middle. And he talked about how if he the character is laughing about something, then the audience doesn't feel they need to. But so he didn't do that and played everything so serious so that the audience filled in that role of laughing. And it's almost the same thing where if Michael acts overly scary, if he like roared or like smeared the blood on his face and like through his hair, it's like it's doing too much, and then the audience doesn't have any room to kind of fit into the media. But with him just being such a blank slate of a reaction in that moment, the audience kind of fills in the scariness themselves, which is it's one of those things that like you just can't teach thought process like that. Like it's really, really creative.
Well, I think I'm going to go ahead and start bringing us home here. So, I'd like to ask you two, would you recommend this movie to people? And I'll start with Dayton. Dayton, would you recommend Halloween 1978 to folks?
Yeah, I'd recommend it. It's just like it's a good classic. It's pretty much, if somebody is interested in horror, they probably have seen it, but like, yeah, you should see it if you want to like know where the like ideas for modern horror movies are and how a lot of them add way too much onto it. Kind of just shows you like bring it back to where it's much more quaint, as you were saying earlier.
I would absolutely recommend Halloween. I think it's hard not to recommend any of John Carpenter's movies just because of the caliber of filmmaker he is, but Halloween is one where you can watch it by yourself or you can watch it in a group, and I think it's going to be two pretty different experiences. Watching the movie by yourself, you can really get drawn in by the pace of it, and if you allow yourself to be taken by it, it will take you along on this it's an interesting plot. It's made incredibly well, and I think the world has such a look to it that it's very easy to get lost in. And then on the other side of that, watching it with a group, there's a lot of space for the group to kind of fill in and have a fun time with the movie, because when you look at some things in isolation, they can be seen goofy. Like Michael just kind of standing behind that hedge and then walking behind it. It's a little silly if you just like take it as it is. And I think those are the types of things that aren't necessarily bad, but a group can have fun watching it as a viewing experience. And I don't think the ability to laugh at this movie nowadays detracts from its quality whatsoever. So I would absolutely recommend Halloween.
No, I agree 1000%, because the first thing that went through my mind when I finished this movie is, man, this would be a lot of fun to watch with a group together. Like, this feels like a great party, like low-key party movie. Just like, okay, we're having like a low-key Halloween get-together. Let's throw on Halloween. And it's just like we all are sort of chilling with that. And so, yeah. I do think it's sort of hard for me, because this is like the kind of movie where I feel very late to the party. And there's always other stragglers, but it's like, it's kind of like, there's a part of me that's just like, I feel like if you have even a remote interest in horror movies and you haven't seen Halloween, I would be very surprised. So it's almost like there's a part of me that's like, I feel like if there's really anyone left for me to recommend this movie to, because otherwise, you know, I would be, if you don't have an interest in horror, then I don't know what to tell you. But if you still are, you know, if you're like me, where you have an interest in the genre, and especially if you kind of want to see what I feel is the most sort of poignant ground zero for a lot of what sort of went on to define American horror for the next few decades, I think absolutely take the time to see something that I think is very in a class of its own.
Halloween, the night he came home.
All right, well, I think that's going to round out this discussion. Thank you all very much for joining me. I love you all, and good night.